Today I'll be speaking on the topic of addressing adhesions and obstructions. Who in this room has had an obstruction? Okay, well, actually, I have had two of them, and the first one I thought, one was enough, two was too many. So I finally woke up after the second time. I have to learn more about what's causing these. So it sent me on a search to see what it takes to prevent any more obstructions. So it relates to the story that I had in last August of 2017, and I'm sitting in Northside's emergency room and in severe pain. So much so that I didn't want to move at all to minimize the sensation of the pain. My wife is sitting next to me, and all I can do was sit up as straight as I could and just be there. I think the emergency room attendants saw how much pain I was in, and they got me back to a room sooner than later. I got back to the room, and as I remember, while I was in that waiting room, about 2 years before that, I had my first obstruction. And that's where, as I remember, they had to stick an NG tube, a nasogastric tube, down my nose into my stomach to suck the air and fluid out to help relieve some of the swelling. However, they stuck it down one time, and it seemed to get caught someplace. They had to take it back out. They had to do it again, and it got caught again. Then they had to put it a third time down through my nose into my stomach. They taped it to my nose, and for about a few days, I had it taped to my nose. To say the least, I can see your expressions. You're kind of feeling what I felt. So, sitting in the waiting room, I said, I don't want that to happen again. They bring me back to the room, and as I remember actually that first time, that I was in so much pain, and they got me into the CAT scan, and all I remember was moaning and groaning, and they wheeled me to my room, and I was moaning and groaning so loud I saw people coming out of their hospital rooms, patients, looking to see what's wrong with this guy. And they laid me down, and they gave me a shot of Dilaudid. Now, I know there's an opiate concern in these days here. However, when you're in that much pain, Dilaudid was like a lifesaver. So at this second time for the obstruction, I said, give me the Dilaudid, please. And they did, and sure enough, it relaxed me enough where they took the CAT scan and they realized it was a partial obstruction, and I didn't need the NG tube. Thank God. And it actually passed. It relaxed me enough where it passed overnight. I had a night in the hospital, and I was able to go home the next day. I got a bill about a couple weeks later for $10,000. My insurance at the time did not cover any of it. My negotiation with Northside Hospital was $3,500. I make my final payment this month. Okay. That's my story. Now, some of you may have had similar stories. If you had an obstruction, you probably have a similar story. So what I want to present to you today is what I've learned in terms of preventing them from happening again. In addition, it's what I've learned, but at the same time, I'm sure things you've learned. So I'm not going to say I learned everything about this. So if you have something to say while I'm speaking that can fill in some gaps, feel free to do that. So let's get started.
Cool.
That's my thing.
I like it. Just so you know, that was right at 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Okay?
You have sheets in front of you that we'll give him when we're done, so if you haven't filled it out because you've been mesmerized, please do take notes because the speakers love getting them.
Yeah, the notes are fabulous, yeah. And if you don't have them, there are more on the corner of the table here. So Eric, if you want to kind of lead us out on feedback for Dr. Steve?
Sure, can I do it from my seat or?
You can do it right, and be comfortable, that's what we want.
I'm very comfortable. Okay, that was great, Steve. I love you started with a personal story. It's always helpful to start people, with something personal so that people can relate to you. And there might be people who have something similar or had something similar. So starting with that question too, has anybody done that? It's a great way to, again, relate to your audience and interact. I love your pitch and your tone and your articulation. Your pace is very good too. And the way you told the story, you really used your body, your hands, and you brought us into your experience of it. So I thought it was going to be a 10-minute talk, so I actually wrote down, it felt like it was a little bit long of a story. The key with the story is just the main highlights. Just hit on those main highlights. It felt like it was about a 3-minute story, maybe around there. So if you're doing a 10-minute talk, I would shorten it a little bit. But it was a very compelling story. You're very passionate about the subject. It just comes through that this is your why, right? This is something that's happened to you, and obviously this is your expertise, but it's coming through like you're really sharing from your heart. So that draws people in. It's very compelling that way. There were a couple moments when you were telling the story about the pain you were feeling. I noticed a smile on your face. So if it's a painful thing, really show it through your face, right? It's like, oh, so that people can really feel that pain that you're experiencing. And I noticed you were spending a lot of time on that side of the room. In a setting like this, it's really helpful to sort of divide up the room in thirds, spend an equal amount of time on each side of the room. That side, this side, this side. And also maintaining eye contact. It's something I'm sort of picky about, is staying with each person for a little bit of time instead of just going from here to here to here. Is developing that sense of rapport with each person, being with one person at a time. Yeah, those are my comments. I think overall, I was really drawn in to the story and to your energy, your presence. Yeah. It's very strong. You feel very grounded, like this is something that's natural for you. I didn't sense any, like, I'm not sure what I'm doing here or any of that. So you just felt like you came across authentically and powerfully.
Thank you.
So well done.
Thank you.
Excellent. Who else?
I have a quick question. So you're presenting to fellow small bowel obstruction sufferers or this IBS people? Who is your audience exactly?
It's the regional meeting. They have a quarterly meeting for the ostomy folks who have urinary intestinal diversions at Northside Hospital.
So half of your audience would have experienced a small bowel obstruction already?
Oh, possibly, yes. Yeah.
And but there would be some that would not have?
Possibly, yes.
So as a physician, one thing that I think that might help is to explain what it is. Because there's some of us that don't know, and a lot of times we medical people, we kind of just like, small bowel obstruction. But people really don't know. And so even with your hands, you can say, this is, your intestine is like a tube, blocking. Can you imagine what would happen north of the blockage? So we always have to, I think as physicians, and medical people, be very careful because not everybody can follow us. One of the things I love that you did, they always tell us not to lose the audience, right? As you take a turn, take your people with you. You were great at that. You made sure we were engaged at every single time in your talk. I love that. But you don't want to leave people out at the very beginning because they don't know what SBO is or maybe what causes it. Awesome. Awesome job. And I almost wish that this wasn't here because I know that you would have been right up here.
Yes.
You would have been right up here with us. I loved how you sat down, when you talk about your pain. I could feel that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Ditto what was said. The only comment I would give, because I was really with you, I really could feel it. There were a few times where I could not tell what you were saying. I missed the words.
Yeah.
So I think, watching your articulation at times, and then you kind of sped up at the very end. So maybe a little bit, I'm big on like pausing, because
Sure.
I think, so. I can't say exactly what the words were that I didn't hear,
I
but
noticed it too.
there were a few times where,
Right.
yeah. Okay, great. But overall, really good.
I agree with all the positive things that were already said. And getting to your speaking, you are a little soft-spoken normally. So really think about the fact that you're in front of an audience and you've got to project out to them, even when you're sitting down, like Sherry was saying, and you're acting out your pain, which, good notes on that, to really say, I was in pain, I was really in pain, and really get into that. But accentuate those words out to the audience so we can hear what you have to say about that. And on the story itself, I felt like it was a little slow in a couple parts, but Eric's note on taking a few of the details out might really help for somebody who hasn't had an obstruction to just follow you in the story and hear the important parts of that.
A couple things. When you went into the sitting and the pain, it didn't look like pain. I heard you saying pain, but I wasn't getting it. Interestingly, what I was getting was this really lovely meditative feeling.
As I remember back, I had to do that. That was part of the experience that I had, to get through that.
Yeah.
So if you're going to give this group a meditative experience,
Yeah.
that felt so good.
I know.
I think your live intro.
I was doing heart math while I was doing
Yeah.
Thank you for saying heart math. So that part of your intro is very interesting, but it doesn't tie to the topic. So I want to know I want to know a little bit more about your credibility for this topic. So when you say heart math and I'm here about bowel obstruction, I'm not getting it. I do think the live intro is the great opportunity very quickly without taking a lot of time in your program to cut right to why you should listen to me. I think the other things are interesting too, and they're fine, but I want a little bit more there. And I think that final punchline that you gave, so that's my story, I think you can do so much more than that. So that is the time to say, so now here's what you should be thinking about, and here's where we're going, and I have something for you.
That's great.
You know, I like that, and I wrote down something. You did a good job of describing the physical pain and even a little bit of the financial pain associated with what you went through. There may be something that you can kind of wrap into, this is what people who are going through this are experiencing. It's not just about the moment that they're in the hospital. It goes well beyond that. It affects their family, it affects their livelihood. There's a whole host of things that create this overall pain in the process of going through this. And so I think getting centered on what's the takeaway. So if it's an audience of physicians, are the physicians to have a kind of a better understanding of that pain? If it's an audience of sufferers, is it a I can show you a better way? If it's an audience of people that don't suffer, but maybe could communicate with those that are suffering or communicate in general, then it's a here's a path to kind of to evangelize what's happening so that people understand what's going on here. So thinking about kind of what's the audience walking away with, and then how can you structure that story so that it illustrates each point, I think would be huge.
That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
That's the piece.
Yeah.
That's why I'm speaking. Good.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for doing this. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love that you had your skin in the game. You had your skin in the game on many different levels. Already has been said, financially, physically, emotionally, and how that affected you. That really was the draw in for me. I would love you to find the funny. So we're going to obviously have a speaker on Saturday that's going to be talking about finding the funny. But Jeff has spoken on the funny. There's stuff on our site too about the funny. But I was just thinking one way to pull people in is to talk about plumbing. So Sherry's line is, I teach people how to sleep their way to the top. And it would be great for you to have a funny line, whether it's about plumbing or getting clogged up or what happens when the crap doesn't hit the fan. Right? Like, so just something that would be like,
I love that.
you're gonna want your crap to hit the fan, friends. Yeah, thank you. You know, just something that
That's a
will,
good one.
yeah, something that will just make people laugh because it's pretty intense,
I
right?
know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can be funny, I'm pretty sure, because you seem like you
Yeah.
have the smile inside.
Should I start with that or put that in someplace?
I would bookend it. I would start it with a compelling line about something to that effect, and then at the very end, remind them. That's, you know, that, yeah, so, and whatever it is, but.
Then you're bringing a pipe in or something. Yeah, something.
Garden hose. Yeah, something
A
that will
key to the
just.
garden hose?
Thank
Yeah.
Has this ever happened to you?
Right, yeah.
Imagine if this was your intestines, not your,
But you really want one line, boom.
Yeah.
You don't want a bunch of explanation.
Yeah,
You're,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
good at that, but that's not what's gonna, they're not gonna take that home. They're gonna be like, what did he say? You know, you
Yeah.
want one takeaway. What's your takeaway? What are they gonna remember when they walk out the door? What do you want them to remember? Don't let your crap hit the fan. Or, you know, you do want your crap to hit the fan, whatever it is, yeah. But excellent vulnerability. And as a performer, so when you sit down, it has to be super important. Even though you're sitting down and you're concentrating on your pain, you don't even have to express pain, but you have to make it important. You are in unbelievable pain. So your volume would not change, it wouldn't get less even though you're bearing pain. For us, the audience members, the importance of that has to be just as important when you're standing up. And for some reason, when you sat down, it got a little bit quieter
Yeah.
and more intense,
Yeah.
which is good to have levels,
Yeah.
but we lost a little bit of your intensity on that. So somehow, to purpose that just as strongly as the rest of the talk.
can we massage that a little bit? Because I took it as, because I think sitting down, I think your point is awesome. So let's massage this, because I think you want to put that in. I took away, you were in so much pain that you couldn't move.
Yeah.
You mentioned needing to stay
Yeah.
upright,
Yeah.
because doing this makes the obstruction worse. So how can he take advantage of that? Because I love the fact that he sat. I love the fact that you sat, because it told us, yeah, pay attention. So what can you do? What can he do? I'm not an actress, but literally, he couldn't move.
Right.
How do you portray that? I don't know.
I think he portrayed that part really well. I think he was very stiff. Yeah, I think it was fine. We just don't want the volume to drop. But I think you definitely portrayed it. Some people have said they saw a smile when they wish they could have seen no smile. So that's already been addressed in
Right.
that sense.
A
But
smiling item, yeah, past that.
yeah,
But there's a line there between how much more we would wish to have of how bad it was. I think we all got a good feel for how bad it was. And too much more would be maybe more than I could bear, I'll just speak for myself. But that was bad enough.
yeah. I don't want more of that. I just
Yeah.
want the volume to be equal with the rest of the presentation, so I don't
Right.
have to do this.
Like Pam said, just keep projecting
I
out.
think your thing is an enunciation thing, so some words get swallowed and get quiet, and you can listen to that, for that specifically when you listen to your tape.
Great, you guys, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful.